Hey guys, it's your boy Shanus, and last week we reviewed the car from a consumer lens. This week we're going to check out all the modifications done to the car. Hey guys, real quick before we jump into the meat of this video, I did just want to acknowledge and give a disclaimer that if it feels like I'm going really fast with a lot of these things, there's a specific reason. If I took my time and was really detailed about certain things, it might obviously make this video that much longer because there's quite a bit of things that I've done to the car in the last 4 years. So if you do have any questions, obviously please feel free to comment or ask down below in the comment section. I'll do my very best to address them. But of course, this is just purposely done so that way I can actually focus on the things that I want to be very transparent about and informative, obviously, for you guys. So with that being said, if it feels like I'm going really quickly, there's a specific reason for that. But let's get straight into the video. First and foremost, for those of you guys that didn't watch the previous video, I'm showing you my mileage so you guys are aware of how long mileage-wise a lot of these modifications have been on this car. So considering some of these things have been on the car since maybe a year in, so we're at 25,000 miles, and I'd like to say that the majority of the modifications on the car, with the exception of a few which I'll make note of, have been on the car at least from the 6,000 mile mark. So with that, you know, keep that in mind when I talk about actual parts that can experience wear and tear. But since we're inside the vehicle, let's kind of get the minor things out of the way that you would call mods, right? So shift knob is actually the original shift knob. I just did a minor little modification and replaced the top plate for the N1 just because it was a little nicer, a little more aggressive. So stock shift knob, but the car, because mine's an R spec, came stock with short shifter. That's working well. Reason why I'm looking at this though is right underneath, we've had twice now shifter bushings. The first ones were from 6th gen, which were amazing, and then the latest ones are from the sponsor ADDW1, and as you can see, the firmness of shifting, just there's no flex. It just gives you more confidence when you do enthusiastic driving. So short shifter aside, I would definitely recommend doing the bushings. Also, my aftermarket shift boot is doing amazingly well. This one by a company called In Focus. So again, doing a great job. No issues, no wear and tear. Love it. And then last but not least, the Govy Dream Color LED interior kit is doing a phenomenal job. I know it's really sunny right now, so I just kind of wanted to show you guys that it works nicely, and I have had no issues with that. The vinyl wrap that I did for the interior is actually holding up very well. So I honestly wasn't a fan of it, obviously, and I complained about how it's a bit harder to work with this particular brand, but obviously it's still lasting. It's not peeling or doing any kind of deteriorating, so props to that. And last but not least, these were kind of done recently, but interior LEDs are working fine without any kind of issues, so nothing to report there. Also, last but not least, since we're headed outside of the interior, is the Veloster N sills or door plates. They're on there, nice, and no issues. So now that we're outside, we've closed the door, obviously. My first gripe, unfortunately, was I obviously park in sunlight a lot, so these are the Korean autosafe Veloster specific window sills, or as I call them, window visors, and they've obviously seen better days. They look extremely opaque. I didn't wash them or polish them just to show you guys that unless you actually wax them and do a special polish like back to black, this is what they end up looking like after a while. So I'm not extremely happy with that, but again, it's plastic. You get what you pay for. You guys get the point. Speaking of other trim pieces that have seen better days are the original Rally Armor mud flaps. Again, as you can see, I made sure not to polish them or grease them up during the wash, so you could just see that this is what you expect or what to expect from mud flaps. And this is probably the first thing we did to the Veloster, besides obviously upgrading bulbs to LEDs. These are probably on almost from the start. So yeah, these have probably definitely seen 4 years of usage, and they're not holding pretty, unfortunately. While we're back here, wheels. So I bought my wheels not brand new, used. So the wheels are fine, just lug nuts. So if you get colored lug nuts, again, expect them to eventually have some fading and even have some chipping if you're really aggressive, and have them like at a shop where they impact them or whatnot, because again, you could see clearly that they're fading a bit. They're still red, obviously, but again, that's just something to expect. So if you do a lot of shows, because again, this is for you tuners out there, probably have an extra set of lug nuts so you can remove your daily ones with your prettier ones when you go show off the car. Now, since we're back here, I'm actually going to talk about the lowering springs. So I don't know if you could see them, but I have Megan lowering springs. I know they're one of the more affordable brands and also one of the less aggressive drops as far as lowering springs. And to note, I did buy these used off of Missy Kitty, for those of you guys who follow her on Instagram. And I have to say, I'm actually really happy. This isn't my first set of Megan springs. For those of you guys that haven't followed the channel, I actually have a set of Megan springs on Stacy's XB, which was lowered. And one thing to note is that on the XB, it's actually a much more aggressive drop. We've had that XB, oh man. That XB has been owned for 9 years, and one thing that I kind of like, because typically Megan springs aren't so aggressive, is that it does allow for your stock suspension to not be worn out as fast compared to, for example, getting some sport lines by Eibach, which have typically like a 2-inch drop. Again, a much more aggressive drop where other suspension pieces like bushings wear out much faster. So I highly recommend them if you're not trying to have an extremely aggressive drop and if you daily drive. Now, of course, if static is your particular thing, then go as aggressive as you like, but just keep in mind that your suspension components will wear out a lot faster. You're probably better off avoiding lowering springs and going with a coilover setup. Or if you're really bougie and have the money, you can go bags. It's up to you. Going from that, we're just going to go real quick on the taillights. My LEDs in the rear are working absolutely fine. However, I did recently replace the turn signals only because one of the rear turn signals was having a flickering issue. So it just happens. Again, I don't want to fault the brand because, you know, it's a hit or miss. Sometimes you'll get a bulb that's just defective. Who knows? But there's that. So we're going to get a little low here. For those of you guys following me, I recently changed some of the little cosmetic things. So I updated the rear tow hook. Before I had a off-brand one, but just to show you, as you can see on my license plate bolts, anything that you do of this nature will eventually get eaten up by the sun. So it won't be this nice bright color. It'll end up fading and looking something like that. So keep that in mind. One thing I did a little extra with this is I actually applied an extra clear coat or a few coats all over to try to increase the nice shine of the color. So there's that. Now moving over here, we have the exhaust system, which is a Greddy, the one that they make for the Veloster. And if you look there, you can see the muffler. And so obviously I've had no issues with this exhaust system. Again, for those of you that aren't familiar, I did buy it pre-owned, and I'm not low enough to have it scrape or anything like that. Even the previous owner was not slammed, so the piping was actually in amazing shape. And to be honest, I believe he only had it for like 5,000 miles before he decided that the Veloster was not for him. So come up for sure. Amazing exhaust. I've had it last me a very long time, clearly. The only concern and gripe, for those of you guys unaware, is it's got a nice grumble. It's not insanely loud. For those of you guys interested, I do have obviously a video on this channel, basically with a really quick install and then just my overall opinions and how loud it is. So go watch that if that's something that interests you. It's a love-hate relationship. I mean, I dislike that it's not loud because sometimes I'd like to be loud, but on those days where, for example, you just had a long day from work and you really just want to cruise and not have like a lot of nuance or droning, this exhaust is amazing because it's quiet unless you really open it up and go wide open throttle, you don't have any kind of nasty droning inside the cabin at all, and it just sounds clean. So for the most part, I love it, but every now and then I really wish it were a little louder. Moving up here, we have the now discontinued variant spoiler that used to be sold by SoCal Garage Works. One thing I wish I would have done a little more research is I was not aware that this was actually a replica, and I'll show you what I mean. Also, I didn't paint it because paint, believe it or not, obviously was a little more expensive. So I originally vinyl wrapped it. In the sun, you could definitely tell the two-tone difference. Also because this vinyl wrap has just been starting to get eaten up, and I didn't put any kind of vinyl wrap chemical to kind of make it darker and stand out. So again, I did all of this for transparency because I wanted you guys just to see. If you guys are interested in this one, unfortunately they no longer make that replica. SoCal Garage Works does not sell it anymore from what I've been informed. However, the original maker does still make this. I'll post the name in this video because I forgot it off the top of my head, but you can still buy it, but keep in mind it's a lot more expensive because it is the original. But you'll probably have better fitment. I actually do plan on replacing this particular spoiler with the original one down the line and selling this one to whoever is interested. And I'll show you what I mean. So you see right here, there's barely a gap, pretty much non-existent. But if you go on this side, you see that there's a big gap between the spoiler and the actual body, and it's just not uniform. See, I don't know if you could tell right there, but clearly that side right here has a much bigger gap than this side right there. So again, that's just one tiny issue I had. Also fitment, just had to kind of mess with it a little bit. Had to do a little extra work even just to get the OE light bar in here. Had to mount it upside down, things like that. Coming up to the front, we have the headlights, again, upgraded cosmetic tow hook. I used to have a circular one before, but it got really eaten up. So now I have this little triangular one. LEDs that are actually switchbacks for the fog lights, and the headlights have LEDs. My high beams slash DRLs are now LEDs. I will be releasing a video of that. I'm actually really happy with this one. You'll see in the future. And then obviously LED turn signals, and the big thing, the carbon fiber hood. So a few things that I'm just going to go on about. First, I'm going to address the hood. So the hood I bought used from a other Veloster owner, hence these X's. The previous owner actually had hood pins. I wasn't really a fan of that, so had to cover up the hole some way. But a few things. So I made a video about this particular hood. This is by a company called Extreme Dimensions, I believe, and just the fitment issue, because it's essentially a replica of the Vis hood. So as you can see right here, there's a gap. It does not sit flush like the OE stock hood, and I'll show you on the other side. Again, even larger. So that's my first complaint. But my second complaint, and something that I've actually heard from other carbon fiber hood owners, is just the bad job that the companies do with their initial clear coat. So when I actually bought this hood, it looked horrible, and to be honest, it probably got damaged even more because there was no clear coat. It was just completely eaten up. So I know in the camera it looks pretty decent and nice, but if I zoom in and look at it, and this is one of the reasons why I kind of want to wrap this hood, there's clear indications of prior just kind of like damage and whatnot. I know that a lot of it seems like it's part of the clear coat, but there's just even like instances in the weave of the carbon fiber where you'll notice oxidation started to take place, and unfortunately that's not something you could really reverse. So it is what it is. I will also eventually be buying just a whole brand new carbon fiber hood to replace this one. Hopefully better fitment, better clear coat, all that good stuff. So now we're under the hood, and just this is kind of a really quick rundown of these things. I have the ADDW1 V2 dual catch can kit. I know that you've seen me install the V3.3 on a few other cars. I honestly just wanted to keep the dual cans because I wanted an individual can for each side, one for the PCV side, one for the intake side. But they've been doing their job very well. I'm really happy with them. As far as aesthetics and everything, of course, mine have seen better days as far as the bolts go. So you see a bit of oxidation going there. And also, I just haven't cleaned them, so they don't look as presentable. But if you're going for show quality, this is probably one of the better kits. I do like the mounting positions. I like how simple and clean it is. It's effective, and it just has a ton of options for dress up, including being able to change the collars to whatever color you desire. And if they don't make the color you want, obviously just paint them whatever color you desire. You might lose the ADDW1 logos, but that's a small price to pay to have uniformity. Same thing with the washers. The washers that I bought haven't done so well. This one obviously looks nice. This one is oranged out just because the sun actually barely creeps through when the hood is closed, and it's just kind of eaten up the color of that one. So just things to be mindful of. But again, if you're going for a show car, this ADDW1 kit, any of them, is an amazing additional kind of like wow to your underhood. Otherwise, if you're just wanting function over everything, you can buy any other kit in the market and save a little bit of money. I know I mentioned LED bulbs earlier. They're all doing well, no issues there. It's not nighttime, so I'm not really going to turn them on for you, but had no issues there. The Megan Racing strut bar, it's doing its job. It's there. I mean, there's not much to tell about that. Really, there's, unless it broke somehow, you really can't complain. The last thing that we have under the hood is the AEM. It's technically a cold air that they sell, but I made it into a short ram. So there's technically an extra pipe that goes from here down behind the headlight, almost down into the fender, and a much longer cone filter. I actually had to find this AEM cone filter myself by measuring the sizing and whatnot. All I did was just not connect the extra pipe and made it into a short ram. And it just does its job. The one thing I've mentioned before is clearly the fact that this was a more expensive option, but the main reason why I went with it was because of the carb sticker, making this completely legal in the state of California and obviously any other state that has really strict emissions laws. For those of you guys interested that don't have to worry about that, or just don't care to risk it, you could obviously buy intake kits that are either larger or even more economical. Ones that stand out to me are the one made by Sixt, where they have a bunch of options, including the bypass or cutting off the bypass completely, so you have a complete vent to atmosphere setup. I've even seen them do custom colors for those of you guys that are interested in that. So it's up to you. AEM has notoriously been a very reliable and big name brand, along with others like InGen and K&N. But keep in mind, at least two of those options are street legal, and you obviously get what you pay for. So those are pricier options. There are more affordable options down the line. Last but not least, I don't think I'm forgetting anything, minus the one thing that's underneath here, which if you follow me, you'll know that I recently upgraded and I changed it. But for this next segment, we kind of have to go back to home base because I have a lot of explaining to do. So let's transition over there so I can show you what I'm talking about. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to home base. So while I was actually on the way back home and everything, I actually did realize that I forgot one modification to address, and that's actually the shifter bushings that are underneath the hood. So they're actually right underneath the battery mount, and where the battery basically sits. It's right above obviously the transmission, and it's the bushings that go attached to the shifter cables. So those are doing really well. Of course I can't show you that because I would have to disassemble that whole battery section. And again, they're just metal plates. I'll show you a picture of them right over here. They go and replace the rubber bushings that are attached to the shifter cables, again for a more rigid and firm feeling when you're doing shifting, much like the shifter bushings that go where the shift column mount is. So I'm really happy with those as well. I haven't had any issues. I did address in that video that one of them was quite a bit of a pain to install just because it was kind of a little oversized, so I had to work with that, but nothing too crazy. But now we're back to home base. So to summarize, most everything's actually been doing really well in the car. My only gripes are pretty much aesthetic pieces. So the window visors that go over the door windows are obviously faded. The vinyl is starting to fade, so you saw me show you that on the wing. But I forgot to mention, it's also obviously taken the same issue when it came to the amber deletes. That's really understandable. The amber deletes have been there for probably about 2.5 years now from the original install of my second set. And because they're so inexpensive, it's not something that really I'm too concerned about. To begin with, that was actually something that I was pretty sure I would have to replace every now and then. So there's nothing there, and then obviously just one set of turn signal LED bulbs that I had to deal with. So all in all, nothing too crazy. Most everything has actually lasted the test of time and has been doing really well. So I'm really happy with the overall investments. Those are my kind of biggest gripes, but the biggest one, for full transparency, that I'm trying to address today, besides the other little minor things, are the blow-off valve. So I went from this bad boy, the Turbo XS model that I was really happy with and I bought originally, to the Go Fast Bits Divx valve, which is a lot more expensive, to the point where when I originally bought this, I'll be really honest with you, I feel like I paid about $120, and this was new, this wasn't secondhand owned, and this, with a slight discount, I got for about $245. So if you're doing the math, this is almost twice the price of that one. But I'm honestly really happy with this for a lot of different reasons, and honestly I really feel that the build quality warrants the price. Also the adjustability, the fact that you could do full vent to atmosphere or recirculate it. But again, this video is not to obviously give you a full review of this valve, since obviously there's videos for that. I actually wanted to address something that happened once I replaced the Turbo XS valve with this one. And so I actually ended up giving away the Turbo XS valve to my friend Missy Kitty at the time, so she could have a blow-off valve of her own, since I clearly didn't have a need for the Turbo XS. Keep in mind, it was, again, nothing finicky with it. We didn't do anything. We just quite literally uninstalled and then installed the new blow-off valve, and then clearly uninstalled the stock and had her just bolt down the Turbo XS valve. But again, like I said, for transparency's sake, shortly after the install, quite literally on the test drive after installing, to make sure that no check engine light was triggered or whatnot. So this is the Turbo XS blow-off valve, and this is basically what happened. And I know that this is something common. I've seen this in forums, and I've heard from people that have had the Turbo XS valve have issues. Again, when I originally created the original video for the Turbo XS valve, I had no issues. I hadn't had any problems to report. And again, I had this valve approximately for 3 years on the vehicle, spirited driving. So again, there's no problem. And then quite literally, it's kind of scary to know that I literally changed blow-off valves at the right time, because I probably would have been left stranded if I had driven the car once or twice more the way I normally do. Again, there was nothing that we did that was anything crazy about the install. It was quite literally, there's no reason to be touching this part. We actually left the original hose from my install, so quite literally there was nothing to touch anywhere around here. It was quite literally just mount the 3 bolts, 1, 2, and then 3, and then just attach this end to the coupler, and that's exactly what was done. And then on first drive, she basically lost all power because boost wasn't being held anymore. She got check engine lights, and of course she basically limped mode back home. Fortunately, the test drive, she wasn't too far from home, so wasn't as drastic of a story as it could have been. But for me, that again, I was daily driving my vehicle to and from work, and work is approximately about 30 minutes away. This happening to me on the highway would have been a bad day. It wouldn't have been catastrophic, but it would have been definitely something to not have such a pleasant time, you know, being stranded on the side of the road, maybe having to wait for a tow, clearly, if you couldn't drive the car. Not to bash the Turbo XS valve, because again, it did its job, but as far as a part that should last quite a bit of time. And again, even mileage wise, you guys saw the mileage at the beginning of the video. This car, this valve was probably on there around the 7,000 mile marker, maybe 8,000. So clearly the valve only lasted about 16,000 miles. That's honestly not something that I'm happy with. I'm not bashing the company or anything. I'm clearly not bashing the product. I'm just letting you guys know, because from my point of view, it's a little bit unacceptable. Clearly it was past its warranty time, but as far as a car that I really take care of, again, I'm not tuned, I'm not pushing more horsepower than I should be, really. And the fact that, I mean, it's a quality product, or at least it seems like it, right? It's very disheartening. So I wanted to address that because, again, for the mileage and for the time, 3 years, 16,000 miles, this part should have lasted a lot longer than it did. But again, the biggest thing, it's a statement that you always hear: you get what you pay for. This is the most affordable blow-off valve that they make for our vehicles. It's meant to sit on the original stock location, so it's also probably one of the most popular for those people that don't want to cut a hole or buy a whole bypass kit to remount the blow-off valve. This is one that people naturally gravitate to, just like I did. With that being said, it's not a product review, but if you could splurge or pay a little bit more, whether you guys are really into getting a Greddy or HKS valve and you're okay with relocating it, or if you're trying to use the stock mounting point, my obvious recommendation would be the GFP Divx valve. But there's other options out there like the forged blow-off valves. So again, you're not, it's not all is lost, and those are obviously more affordable options than this one. But yeah, guys, I just really wanted to address that. I wasn't expecting this at all. It's rather unfortunate to even have to be making this section of the video. But again, this is why I do these, you know. My 2-year review, my 3-year review, everything was fine. I had nothing to honestly complain about. Now that some of these things have been on the car for a while, again, anything else that's been performance oriented, I haven't had any issues with. The bushings, the lowering springs, the strut mount, the oil catch cans, the intake, the exhaust, none of that have had any issues. The cosmetic stuff obviously has seen some wear because of the sun beating down on it, kind of like the anodized metal tow hooks, the bolts for the dress-up kit, the vinyl wrap, of course, and my window visors. Those are all obvious little things that have had just small wear, again, because of the sun. But that's kind of normal. It's to be expected. It's not unacceptable. Having something like this happen to something that should last you a lot longer, in my eyes, especially for the time or the mileage, is honestly extremely unacceptable. So that's pretty much it. Now, the silver lining in this video is that from users and other people that have recently bought this particular model, I have heard that they've done drastic changes. I had a friend who actually, unfortunately, and I'm sharing this for full relevancy, had bought in one of these brand new, and immediately at install had this break off right from the start. So again, it was a hit or miss condition. There was some people that had the Turbo XS valve that already had, unfortunately, had issues from the start. I have heard that they've reinforced that particular hose lining and have made it a lot more rigid and stronger. So again, it sounds like they've addressed the problem, but take my misfortune or this particular video with a grain of salt, in that you get what you pay for. Will the new models have no issues? Probably. Again, this particular part has been on the market for quite a few years, so they might have definitely rectified the situation. Like I said, I bought this 3 years ago, but as always, you get what you pay for. If you could buy something else, my recommendation now would be that you do, and if you clearly want the best, in my opinion, that would mount in the same place as the OE, so that way, you know, you don't have to cut anything or replace or reallocate things. I would say save up and get this, especially just because there's just so much to this. And if you're interested in what I'm talking about, obviously go watch my review videos on this, because I love this thing. But guys, that about wraps up this video. There's not much more to tell. I feel like I was pretty obvious and pretty direct about most of the things addressed here. However, if there's something that I missed or something that you have a further questioning, please feel free to put in the comments down below. I'll do my very best to reach out to you and respond. Unfortunately, every now and then I kind of go through the depths of YouTube's creator section, and I find that some of the comments that you guys leave, for whatever reason, don't show up on the post. So forgive me, it's not that I'm ignoring you, it's just if I don't get them there, it's very hard for me to obviously respond to everybody. So I do my very best to reply to everybody. If it's something that you absolutely need to know and for whatever reason you don't hear a response on the comments within a week's time, I probably suggest you to email me or message me via Instagram, because again, I will more than likely get that one. YouTube has a very funny algorithm about comments and whatnot. So again, just if something that you need addressed, please feel free to ask. I'll do my very best to address it. That wraps up this video, guys. The next video, like I mentioned before, is going to be the holiday gift buyer's guide, and I'm extremely excited to go through that stuff with you guys. I actually have a few things in transit right now that I should be getting this week that I'll be showing you guys in that video. So again, I'm just really excited to release that video because there's so many cool things that I've found since previous versions of that video that I feel like you guys would definitely appreciate. And then after that, we're gonna get back to doing installs, just because there's a lot of stuff that I need to put on the car, and there's a lot of things that I need to do because again, like I mentioned, 2020 was just a rough year, and I definitely want to make this car look completely different going forward. So with that being said, guys, thank you for sticking around. I know this was a long video, but hopefully this was informative to you guys. As always, thank you for all the love and support. Be safe, keep doing you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.